Hello and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. This is Austin's Little Sprouts, and one of the purposes I have for this channel is to encourage you to just get out there and plant something. Maybe this is your first time starting a garden. I want to be an encouragement to you. Doesn't matter what you pick. Find something you like, something your family likes, whether it's something pretty like flowers, something you like to eat, like veggies. Just get out there and plant something. The topic of today's video is pushing through the winter. Before now, I've always gardened in a more cold climate where the winters were a lot colder, so there wasn't a lot of options to plant during the winter. So I am now in a more southerly latitude, so I have a little more options. So this video is to say what I've learned this first winter trying to push through the cold months, as well as what I would do differently and what is working well. One of the things that I'll talk about in the video is this greenhouse, and it is something that has been a lot of fun to be building, and I'll just give you a quick tour of the greenhouse before we continue on. Right now, my greenhouse is housing my peppers. These I have dug up from my garden before the first freeze and have them in 5-gallon buckets, just awaiting the spring where I will plop them back into the garden and see how they do. Last year, these peppers had an incredible yield, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next year. I have some greens I have started, some of them in this planter, some spinach and lettuce. This has some carrots that are just starting to sprout. Over here I have my lavender plant. This is a rescue plant, poinsettia, that I'm trying to save. Over here I have some onions and garlic that are I just planted, so I'm hoping to have them sprout soon. This is cilantro that I think is not going to sprout. I'm going to have to replant. My kale is doing very well. I did not plant this very long ago, and it's all sprouting well. I've got a little fan here to give it a little pseudo breeze. Pretty soon I'm going to be transplanting these into my cold frames and cold frame hotbed combination. I've saved some vines from my sweet potatoes. I have about 6 of those, 5 here. One of them's in the house that I'm hoping to keep alive through the winter. These ones are not looking so good, but the one in the house actually is looking fantastic. This is our mini greenhouse that we've been adding to over the years. I've added those big windows and we've insulated it. We have a little electric heater in there in case it gets too cold, but most of the nights it keeps right about 40 or higher, so I don't need to heat it. I've also done a little bit of experimenting with the solar heater with a hose and a rain barrel, which I have another video on, and that has worked really well. And the water consistently holds about 10 degrees warmer than the temperature in the greenhouse, and over the nights it holds its temperature better than the air, so it helps regulate the temperature inside. Overall, it's been a really good success. I'm able to winter the peppers in there, as well as start seedlings even as early as January, and I'm able to grow potatoes in buckets in there, and all my herbs that are in potted plants I'm able to keep over the winter, which is a bonus. This is my first time growing garlic, and it is doing quite wonderfully. I have it in this small raised bed as well as on the perimeter of this bed. And then I have some plants over here as well. There are about 80 plants in total. And it's my first time growing garlic, so it's an experiment, and I'm hoping next spring and into the summer we'll have some good bulbs. I'm a little nervous that these are too tall going into a little bit colder time and that they'll freeze and kill them, but we'll see what happens. I planted some winter wheat in this box as an experiment. It's doing well. I don't think anyone is surprised by that. Another plant that has grown very well is this kale plant. You wouldn't know it by the look of it because a few days ago the chickens had their way with it and ate everything off of it. But up until now it's been growing very healthily and very well despite the cold. So next year I plan to plant many more kale plants. I will get them established in planters in late summer, and then as the weather is turning, get them in the ground so that they can have some time to get their roots established and get a little bigger before the first freeze. That way I'll have some good kale and greens growing through the winter next year. This was my experiment, and I'm hoping it'll turn around and maybe flower next spring, but we'll see. It's looking pretty rough today. One thing that has been hard about pushing through into winter gardening is how short the fall was. Here's my spinach for an example. I planted this in about end of September, October, and it was so hot that as it was sprouting, I was watering it a lot, and then it was just shriveling up, and only about 8 plants survived. And then it was only a few weeks before it started freezing, so I never really got any good growth out of this spinach, and it's just kind of sitting here looking at me without growing much. So that's something I need to plan for better next year. I think what I will do is establish some of my wintry plants like greens and kale and things like that, and have them in planters in about July or August, and then as the weather breaks I can plant them in the garden more established, so they'll take off and grow better than planting them directly in the ground and having the sprouts killed by the heat. All right, here are my hotbeds and cold frame, and this is kind of something that I would do differently, but also has been a success. The key success has been my compost temperature. I measured it at 120 degrees while it was about 40 degrees outside, and it was 20 degrees last night. However, I have very little room beside the cold frames, and that has kind of caused the compost under it to be very inactive, and I have no way to stir it because I have things growing on them. So what I would do differently is kind of give maybe a foot or 18 inches around the sides of these cold frames. That way I could add material and stir it and keep it more active on the perimeters of the cold frames. I think that would transfer the heat into the cold frames better than what I have here, because everything underneath is just inactive, but this section on the side is quite active. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe. And If I've encouraged you to get out there and plant something, please in the comments let me know, what are you going to plant this week or this winter.